Hey folks, welcome back to Discerning Spirits, the show where we talk Enneagram types over classic cocktails. I'm your bartender, Dan Prevette.
And I'm your bar patron, Colton Simmons. And today we're talking about Type 8, the Challenger. Dan, what are you making for us today?
Colton, for the Type 8, I knew it had to be straightforward. Strong, definitive, always gets the job done. What else could it be? It's the old-fashioned. No. This drink is a classic for good reason. It is delicious, but it's a little bit sweeter than most people give it credit for. We're gonna do whiskey, angostura bitters, sugar, an orange twist, and like our eights, a little bit of fire. All right, sir. Well, here you go. Number 8, the Challenger, the old fashioned.
One of my faves.
Cheers, man. Oh, it goes down so easy every time. So my thinking behind the old fashioned for the 8, pretty straightforward. I mean, it's a very simple cocktail, and it's a cocktail with a huge reputation.
Yeah.
I feel like there are few cocktails as iconic, as well known, and as powerfully reputable as the old fashioned. It tends to be the drink that young men want to order at a bar.
Yep.
I am not for the gendering of cocktails or whiskey specifically, but this tends to get labeled as the manly man's drink. And what I've always thought is so interesting about the old fashioned is that while it is strong, it's mostly whiskey. So the flavors are strong, but the only other flavor in there really are some spices from the bitters, a little bit of orange zest, and sugar. So it's actually sweeter than most people give it credit for, which I always think is interesting.
I love that you use this because it does feel like a gateway cocktail to me. I mean, when I first started drinking cocktails, like you think of Bad Men, you're like, I want an old fashioned, whatever. But I don't think when people think of the Enneagram, they think of the 8 as like a gateway into the Enneagram. They would say more like, oh, that's an intense character.
I think intense is the word for it.
Yeah, so it's interesting because it's like if you get to know it, you'll really enjoy it. But it does have, I mean, you're either going to love it or hate it. There's no way that you're ambivalent about an old fashioned.
Yeah, and I think that once it grows on you, it becomes incredibly drinkable. It doesn't feel like it's a difficult drink at all.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that in the 8's personality.
Yeah.
Let's just start. Just tell me a little bit about the broad overview. Who are our 8s? How does somebody know that they might be an 8 or that they may be interacting with an 8?
It is really hard to mistype an 8 because they are intense people. They are all into whatever they are into. So they're defined as the need for power or the need for intensity. They very much enjoy control, bravado, sort of a sense of powerful independence, if you will. They're in the gut triad. So everybody in the gut triad, 8, 9, and 1, we all struggle with resisting reality. And 8s meet reality head on. Their motto is, here I am, now deal with me. They are not shy about their strengths. If they have weaknesses, they put a lot of effort into conquering them. And they're just really passionate, vivacious, alive people.
So when we're talking about 8s, I think that what is so interesting about 8s on the Enneagram is that is one type specifically where we tend to think of it as men. I think the 8 personality, more so than some of the others, has been incredibly gendered. In the way that 2s are often gendered towards the feminine.
Right.
So it can be hard sometimes when feminine people think of themselves as 8s because they feel like those traits, they're not allowed to have those traits.
Right.
And I think it's interesting with old fashions, it's the kind of drink that when a woman at a bar orders an old fashioned, it tends to get some glances. At least even bartenders will be like, all right, coming right up.
My wife loves old fashions.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about how did that become so clearly like an 8 is a masculine type?
Yeah. I mean, we are all products of our environment. and we all respond, no matter what personality type you are, we all respond to what is approved of to some degree. And if you meet enough resistance and you get enough approval being something else, we're all susceptible to going, well, I guess I'm not an 8, or I'm not a 3. I guess I'm the 2, or I guess I'm a 9, something that's easily approved of, versus something that kind of ruffles some feathers. And 8s ruffle feathers, and we're way more forgiving of men who ruffle feathers and are intense and in your face. We just think that's masculine. I mean, the country of 8s is known as Spain.
Sure,
kind of like the bullfighters, that bravado, sensual, confident,
Yeah.
And we just haven't historically rewarded women for taking on those character traits. Same thing with the 3. I mean, they say female 8s and 3s are the least married types of all the Enneagram personality types. Interesting enough, if they do get married, they marry 1s, because 1s understand the core of who people are. A lot of times they're kind of masters of perception, and they can balance out the intensity of the 8, because 8s are also super concerned with justice. They are very fiery when they feel like something's unfair, and they can feel like it's their job to correct it. Whereas 1s also feel that way, but they are not going to charge into the fire like the way an 8 will.
So let's talk about that love of justice a little bit, because that's obviously an incredible trait to have for anybody.
Phenomenal.
That's a great thing to have. So what is that dark side of an 8 going to look like? Is there still that love of justice, or does it become difficult to judge what is just?
It's kind of like Batman.
Okay.
8, like Batman is the perfect character for what an 8 kind of is like. They will break the rules and do things that no one else approves of if they feel like this is getting me somewhere, or it's improving the world. I'm trying not to pick any like divisive historical characters.
Sure.
So I think I'll stick with Batman, but he's kind of that whole, like, you're the hero we need, but not the hero we want. And that's what 8s kind of take on, that role of, I'm going to do what is not popular because I believe in the long run, this is right and this is helpful for you.
Yeah. Even if you may not be able to see it right now.
Even if you hate me, even if you're yelling at me, 8s aren't deterred by that.
It's funny because it's easy to put that in a large sort of in a large scale, sort of a cultural or social or political context. But honestly, one of the best physical trainers I've ever met in my life is a female 8. And if there's one person that you need who doesn't care if you like them in the moment, it's a really good physical trainer.
We need 8s. And I really don't like the bad stereotype that 8s get. I mean, people call them 8 holes or whatever. And they treat them like they're just belligerent jerks. And they're not. I mean, it's like taking the bottom, 10% of health and saying that's all of them, because everybody wants someone that is committed to ideals. You want people to not be wishy-washy and lukewarm. And 8s bring a lot of that commitment and fire. So
that feels like a perfect segue to talk about directions of health and stress. So first, let's talk about those directions towards stress. What are those warning signs to be looking for in yourself?
So 8s, when they are stressed out and not doing well, they go to 5, which is the investigator, and they get suspicious and they get isolated, and they just feel like, is everybody against me? Is the world safe? Do I need to bury myself away in a bunker and like
conspiratorial?
They just feel like the power structures at B cannot be trusted. I'm all on my own for this. And they'll try to drag people into that. And if people don't want to go along, then they're suspicious of them. Why don't you want to go along with this?
Kind of like Batman just hiding out in Wayne Manor for way too long. Sure.
Going down to the Batcave and figuring out what's going on with this dark underbelly of society. And it can make some irrational decisions in that place. But when they're healthy, ironically, they go to 2, which is the helper. And so they are super committed to people. They are super committed to the needs of others. And all of that courage and boldness and bravado gets directed at improving other people's situations. And they can be incredibly warm, incredibly servant-oriented, almost like behind the scenes. And you're like, that person's an 8. They're always like volunteering and stuff. But they're doing it from such a place of confidence, and they know their worth. And they're like, I don't mind being behind the scenes, because at any minute I could bounce out of here and do something else. It's not from that needy place. So,
they are committed to the value, not to the perception.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think some women may be typed as 2s because they relate to that health and they relate to the beautiful characteristics of the 8. But they just feel uncomfortable maybe being labeled as a challenger.
So let's talk about those wings for the 8. They sit next to the 7, which obviously known for being the fun-loving, good time Charlies, and the 9s, interestingly enough, which we'll get into them in the next episode, but very chill. So what does that look like?
I always love the wings for this reason because it does add such a different layer to an Enneagram personality type. And 8s with the 7 wing, I think they have the most badass name. They're called the Maverick.
I think they win.
I mean, that's
whoever was naming
the
wings.
Enneagram Institute. I was like, wow, y'all went all in on this one.
Yeah, it was probably written by an 8-wing 7.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, took a liberty.
Probably one of those guys, Rizzo Hudson. They're the Maverick. I also like to call them the entrepreneur because they're the most naturally entrepreneurial of any type. We kind of talked about it a little bit in the last episode with 7-wing 8. There's a lot of similarities, but they are driven to kind of impose themselves on as many different areas in life as possible. So you take that kind of desire for new and different of the 7 and you mix that with the 8's intensity and lustfulness, that drive for more and bigger. And they can often be found leading multiple different companies, founding multiple different companies, running, multiple different projects at the same time. Highly capable, like the most energetic people you'll ever meet is probably an 8-wing 7 or a 7-wing 8. They just are so alive. They'll kind of burn people out sometimes because you're like, how do you sleep? And then 8-wing 9 is very different. They're called the Bear, and they are warm and they lead kind of from behind. They sit back and watch what's going on. They are really keen on power dynamics. So they'll be the ones quietly sitting in the back corner analyzing who's in charge of this group. Like, I'm not going to be the loudest one here, but I will definitely read the room and find out where the weaknesses are, where the strengths are. I know he's the boss or she's the boss, but that person really seems like they're in charge. And they are great counselors. They're very self-assured and they're very warm.
I mean, in terms of mythic figures, I'm hearing Ron Swanson. I mean, like, I think that, like,
he's a little bristly, but he might, maybe at his peak capacity, he's got that 9 warmth.
Whenever he gets those warm character arcs, he's
at the end of the episode,
into that space.
After he's had his 10 pounds of bacon and he chills out a little bit. Yeah,
for sure.
Feels right.
Let's talk a little bit about what 8s can do to move into that healthier space. What's that going to look like for them?
Yeah. I mean, 8s do really well to have a soft influence in their life. They do really well to find someone who makes their weaknesses feel seen and approved of. So if someone cannot just affirm, oh, you're just so strong and so capable, but go like, yeah, you kind of fuck up sometimes. And I can tell you're a little scared over here. And that's all good. If someone can stand in the pocket and not expect the 8 to apologize, but just come to them with an equal amount of confidence and go, hey, I know you're, big bad boy on the block, but you know what? I see all these other soft, warm, sugary qualities, if you will. And I like them. I like your softness. I like it when you're calm and you sit back and you don't impose yourself on the room and you're the last person to speak and it's really kind. And if someone can affirm that in the 8 from a place of strength, they need someone to be strong in their approval. It can't be any sense of weakness or softness or like you approve of everybody. So you're just giving me some of that affirmation. If it can be specific, I think you can kind of chip away at that bravado of the 8 and make them feel seen. You go like, all right, it's cool. It's cool that they understand my weakness. It's cool that they understand my past and where I've come from. Because a lot of 8s had to grow up fast. They didn't have a lot of security growing up in the home. A lot of times there's a missing father for 8s. And so they need someone to affirm their inner child because they lose it really fast. Most 8s love things like puppies and babies because they're so innocent. There's nothing they could do to challenge their authority or control. They're only a source of love and affection. And so if somebody can embody kind of that innocence and yet see who the 8 is at their core, I know that's a lot to ask. I feel like as I'm describing it, I'm like, yeah, tall order for anybody out there trying to love an 8. But that's really what it kind of takes, you know?
Well, I think that is really beautiful. And I think that we could all use an 8 in our life. I think that sometimes the world needs 8s, and or I think sometimes the world needs 8s, and I think sometimes you at home need an old fashioned. So whether you've had 100 of them or whether you've never had one before, give it a try. What I love about this cocktail is that it's so easy to make at home, or you can get it at pretty much any craft bar in a neighborhood near you. Once you try it and like it, you'll have a friend for life. So, cheers.
Cheers.